Disappearing lands have and will continue to fascinate me, whether it's the classic stories of Atlantis and Mu, or lesser known tales like that of Harahpan or Indus, along with Catalhöyük, the world's oldest city. These landmasses suddenly vanishing into tales of legend. They leave us with questions such as, what were these cultures and peoples like? How did the people that called these disappeared places home live? If these places had advanced technology, and in some cases, if they even existed at all. Very occasionally, we get to witness one of these disappearances. This has happened recently with the sinking of a Hawaiian island. Could this event help us answer some of the questions we have about the mysteriously lost civilizations of legend? Welcome to IF, videos on mystery and history. Hit that subscribe button and ring that bell to never miss a video again. Once in a while we get to witness events of impressive destruction. Mother Nature flexing her muscle and showing mankind who is really boss. One such incident has just been seen in the islands of the French frigate shoals, one island being wiped from the map. These shoals lay off the Hawaiian coast and were just hit by a huge hurricane. Hurricane Walaka, an intense storm that hit Hawaii earlier this month, wiped the East Island from the map. This remote island of gravel and sand that sat atop a coral reef was swallowed by the oceans as Hurricane Walaka surged past Hawaii earlier this month. Scientists have confirmed the disappearance of the 11-acre island after comparing satellite images of the enormous protected marine area in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. Scientists researching the East Island were using drones to take samples of sand and corals to ascertain the age of the island and gauge its future prospects in the face of climate change. East Island was about half a mile long and 400 feet wide, the second largest island in the area, which until 1952 hosted a US Coast Guard radar station. This island was very important to local ecology, being home to rare species such as the Hawaiian monk seal, green sea turtles, and seabirds such as the albatross. The loss of the land has been described as a huge blow, with scientists saying they did not realize an island could disappear so quickly. These same scientists are concerned that the same could happen to other islands, and each time it does, the risks increase to the mainland. The islands act like bumpers or buffers, often diverting or absorbing bad weather and tidal erosion. As they disappear, the effects are felt harder on the larger land masses. These land masses disappearing could be considered an early warning system for disasters to come. The wiping from the map of these locations should have people living in low-lying lands and coastal cities worried. The tides are rising, and we have to ask ourselves if there will come a tipping point. Will that tipping point come in the form of a sudden catastrophe or a slow rise of sea levels? It would seem the water is coming, and not for the first time. Legends of great floods are found in almost every culture on the earth. There is a lot of scientific evidence which suggests that the world once experienced a flood so large that it covered the entire planet. In the Western world we have Noah's Ark, but legends of great floods are tied to many religions. It turns out that nearly every culture around the world has its own version of a great flood story. Most have an element of magic and mythology linked to them. Tales of God's wrath or other angry deities wreaking havoc on the world to show their displeasure with mankind. The first story is known as the Epic of Gilgamesh. Going back to ancient Mesopotamia and the discovery of ancient cuneiform tablets, they tell the story. The Mesopotamian tale predates the Hebrew version of Noah's Ark by a considerable amount of time. The story talks of the king of Uruk, who was a despicable ruler. The god sent a wild man named Enkidu to stop the oppression of the people. The two instead became friends. As the story unfolds, a series of events end with the gods being angered and sending a flood to punish them. From the Middle East we travel to China and their stories of the Great Flood that happened in the region. In 1920 BC, China experienced a massive flood. In this story of a great flood, it didn't however engulf the entire planet, but for the people living in La Jie in the northwest of the Qinghai province, it would have most likely seemed that way. The tale begins with another natural disaster, an earthquake. This quake sent rocks from the mountains tumbling down and falling into the Yellow River, this creating a natural dam. This natural dam began collecting rainwater over the course of the year, eventually bursting, killing many with a massive flood. Emperor Yu spent 22 years diverting the water. Once the people regained the land, Yu began to rebuild Chinese civilization from the ground up. As the story was passed on by word of mouth over thousands of years, it became increasingly grandiose. To India now, and the Vedas, a series of texts that I often refer to here on the channel, and which seem to always be tied to ancient legend, everything from ancient aliens to lost advanced technologies. So it's no surprise to find they too have a flood legend. The Hindu tale is known as the Matsya's warning. In Hinduism, the god Vishnu takes the form of 10 different avatars. One of these is the fish, Matsya. According to the mythology, King Manu poured water into his hands and found a tiny fish. It begged for help to survive, so he decided to put it into a pitcher of water. By the next day the fish had doubled in size, so King Manu kept putting it in bigger tanks. It became so massive that he brought it to the ocean. He realized that this fish was the god Vishnu, and it was grateful for his kindness. He was rewarded with the warning there would be a horrible drought followed by intense rainfall and flooding. Vishnu instructed King Manu to gather all living plants and animals to survive the flood in a large boat. He brought along 7 sages and their families. The sages were wise men who held all the world's knowledge. They had to settle on land at the top of a mountain, where they proceeded to rebuild civilization. So we reach a point where the stories are becoming predictions of disastrous floods to come. And again, this is not found in just one story, but many. According to Native American mythology, there have been many different stages of humanity. These are split into sagas of the first, second, third and fourth worlds. Every Native American tribe has a similar story of a great flood. It all starts with their creator god being displeased with the way the people have been behaving. The gods want humanity to start over, so they send a flood to cover the planet. Other cultures have left us with similar tales. The epic of Atlantis, Maori legends of the goddess Waiatiri. Australia's Aboriginal people tell stories of the Tiddalek, the frog. From the Philippines to Europe, we hear tales of warnings to mankind, all in a form which is indicative of the local culture. These cultures feared they were about to be erased from the face of the planet. Should we be fearing the same? Could we be the next civilization to fall victim to such an event? Let's take a look at one location that is in the firing path of one of these giant floods. California. The state is under threat from a mega flood. California's next mega flood would be worse than the 1906 earthquake, worse than 8 Hurricane Katrinas, worse than every wildfire in Californian history all combined. The world's first $1 trillion natural disaster. A wintertime mega flood in California could turn out to be the worst natural disaster in US history. The odds are good that such a flood will happen within some time in the next 40 years, a recent study has predicted. The study reported that by the end of the century, it's a near certainty extreme west coast rainstorms will happen at 5 times the historical rate. This is if we continue on the path of global warming that has been mapped thus far. The study's lead author, Daniel Swain, a climate scientist at the University of California, compared California's weather to the pattern of earthquakes. He stated, a major earthquake on the Hayward Fault in San Francisco Bay Area or on the San Andreas Fault east of Los Angeles is an inevitability in the long run, and either event would likely be devastating. Swain says, Yet the big difference with the risk of a major flood event is that human activities are greatly increasing the likelihood of the physical event itself through the emission of greenhouse gases. Congress has held hearings and proposed new funding to prepare for disasters after they'd read the really big one, Catherine Schultz's Pulitzer-winning description of a huge earthquake hitting the area. California's looming megaflood would likely be much worse. In terms of sheer destruction, displacement of human life, reordering of society, a Californian megaflood would be without parallel in modern US history. On his blog, Swain wrote, "Climate scientists are sometimes accused of being alarmist, but I would argue that alarm is a reasonable human response. If we look at the history, it would seem he is correct. Have we become so ignorant that we no longer fear or feel we are in danger of such fast and catastrophic change?" 1861 to 1862, a storm caused massive flooding and cost many lives. It brought the area to its knees economically. Today would be much worse. The threatening disaster has been named Ark Storm, a 1,000-year megastorm that would test the modern infrastructure to breaking point. For California, it looks like the worst of climate change is just getting started. Do you think large parts of the world could be erased by another mega flood? Do you believe in the Great Flood myths and think that these stories are a warning that it may happen again? Is this a natural cycle or something we have caused through global warming? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy what we do here on the channel, please hit that subscribe button, like and share. You can find us across social media by searching weareif. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.